Hi, I'm Tori, and I am a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in pelvic dysfunction, which means I treat things that can go wrong around the pelvis, and this does include diagnoses like Pudendal Neuralgia. However, I am also a person who injured her pudendal nerve almost 2 years ago now. I'm actually in between the 23 and 24 month mark as we speak, but I was riding motorbikes on my honeymoon with my husband. If you want to learn more about my injury and how I got hurt, then you can check out this video. That said, today I wanted to share what is mostly really good and exciting news, I think, to do with my healing in the form of a Pudendal Neuralgia healing update video. It's been a minute since I've shared about my progress. I think the last general healing update I gave was maybe in June of last year. And then I know that I gave a more specific healing update to do with my sexual health and its relationship to my nerve healing, I want to say in September of last year. But either way, a lot has changed in the last 4, 5, 6 months, especially in the last month, and I want to share with you about what's new and where I am in the healing process, or where I think I might be in the healing process. So today I want to talk about the physicality of my current experience. What am I feeling in my body on a day-to-day basis, symptom-wise, if anything? I also want to share about pelvic physical therapy interventions, what's changed, what's shifted in that space, my healing routine, etc., because I think that that's something that I would be really interested in knowing more about if I were someone watching. And the last thing I want to discuss today is my mental health, and just share a little bit about some of the challenges that have come up even this far into my recovery, even with such good news, because it's just fascinating to me. It's so interesting to me the way that my mental health has responded to different steps in my healing process. So that said, I will include timestamps as well as links to any studies or resources or relevant videos mentioned today in the description below. And without further ado, let's begin by talking about where I am and what I'm feeling in my body on a day-to-day basis. So I am really hesitant to use this kind of language, or at least I feel hesitant to use this kind of language, but I do think, objectively speaking, that if I am not completely recovered, if I am not back to my baseline right now, then I must be really, really close to my complete recovery, to my return to the body that I knew before I got hurt. And the reason that I say that is because I have been feeling completely normal. I have been feeling asymptomatic 100% of the time for the last month. I think it's been a month. It's been at least 4 weeks where every day I have felt normal, regardless of the kinds of activities that I've been up to. Now, that said, I promise that this is going to circle back around, but that said, I think that part of the reason that I'm hesitant to say something more firm, more certain about where I am in my healing is because back in the end of last year, maybe October, November, the beginning of December, it really seemed to me that my symptoms were related to the movement of my organs in my pelvis. And I say that because I noticed that my symptoms seem to be related to ovulation. And if you think about ovulation, well, first of all, if you have a female pelvis like I do, then you have 3 organs in your pelvis: your bladder, your uterus and cervix, and your rectum, all really close together. They're much closer together than you might envision in your mind's eye. And they're also not static. the organs in your pelvis move. They move when you move, gravity affects them, the kind of activity that you're up to affects them, etc. And one of the times, cyclically, that your organs move is during ovulation. Your cervix actually descends. It gets lower, closer to your feet to encourage pregnancy, right? That makes it so that the sperm don't have to travel as far, and it also makes it so that they are more easily and readily coated in cervical fluid, which they need to survive in your acidic pelvic environment. But all of that said, your cervix moves during ovulation, and I noticed that my symptoms seemed to respond to that cervical movement where they would get irritated during ovulation. I noticed that towards the end of the year last year, and then I also noticed that running, which is a high impact activity that also involves organ movement in your pelvis, seemed to be a trigger for symptoms. Now, in both of those cases, the symptoms were manageable and mild, but they were still there. And so it seemed to me that an obvious physical trigger, one of the only obvious ones that was left, at least, was organ movement towards the end of last year. And in this last month, I have ovulated. I've actually ovulated twice just because of the patterns of my cycles and where the last month falls, but I've actually ovulated twice. And during both of those experiences, I was asymptomatic. And so part of me sees that and me just being asymptomatic for the last month and says, wow, you must be entering into that total recovery space. You must be returning to your baseline. But the other part of me says, well, you also haven't been as active in the last month. It's been the holidays, so it's also been cold. So I haven't been running or doing a lot of high impact activity to see if that affects my symptoms or not. So what does that mean? That means that in the last month, I have been sitting and driving and crossing my legs. My legs are crossed right now without having to think very much about it, if thinking about it at all. And that's not been aggravating. I've been walking, I've been climbing. Keith and I have been having sex, which I will talk a little bit more about more towards the end of the video, but we've been having sex. I've been using tampons. So I've been engaged in activity in the last 30 days, just not running. And I have been asymptomatic. So I don't know, I'm hesitant to say that I'm back to my baseline, but I have to be close. And I say that out loud and I almost feel like I'm convincing myself. It's all very interesting to observe, but I must be close if I'm not there. And physically I've been feeling really, really, really well, really, really, really good in my body. And it's amazing to be here, and I'm so overwhelmingly grateful to be here. I clearly am having a hard time grasping that it's even happening. So that's where I am physically. As far as pelvic floor physical therapy interventions go, the last time that I saw my pelvic physical therapist was in November of 2021. And even though I was still symptomatic at the time, very, very mild, like I said, seemingly related to the movement of my organs, she officially graduated me, which is to say she seemed to know that I was ready to move on from this kind of intervention even before I knew. But because I wasn't ready, I'm gonna see her again. I will see her one more time, either this month or in February. But during that session, we put together a maintenance program for me. And I want to, and I will, share the specifics of that program in just a minute. And after I share the specifics, I really want to talk about the importance of not attaching yourself to perfection when it comes to any form of healing, but especially healing a pelvic dysfunction like this one. So I'm gonna go in both of those places. As far as my maintenance program goes, I think I shared what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, gosh, maybe in December of 2020. I shared the entirety of the routine, and I haven't shared an update only because it hadn't changed that much. It had just been the progression of certain exercises and stretches and that sort of thing, but the sentiment was the same, so I just never shared an update. But my maintenance program is namely stretches and continuing to activate my deep core. So all I'm doing is stretching my hamstrings, stretching my glutes, stretching my hip flexors, and working on activating my deep core muscles. So that's the routine. That's it. I'm just maintaining or trying to maintain the flexibility that I gained during the last year of the pelvic physical therapy interventions, and I'm also trying to maintain the core activation motor program that I've been working on rewiring over the last year. But I wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about the idea of perfection within the body and the mindset that I found myself sometimes getting into, and that I've certainly observed others get into, about how once you get hurt, you think that you need to make your body perfect or get your body back to this perfect state. But I just don't think that that's true. And I think that my case can be objective evidence that it's not true, or at least it's not always true. So I think I've shared before about my hypothesis regarding the body and dysfunction, but just to set the stage, I think that there's no such thing as a perfect body. I don't think anybody's walking around with perfect muscle flexibility, perfect strength, perfect motor programs, etc. I think that all bodies are dysfunctional in some ways, and I think that all bodies can manage a certain amount of dysfunction before they become symptomatic, before you have an issue or an injury. And the way that I envision that in my mind's eye is I think of the body as a cup, and I think of dysfunction as liquid, which is to say the cup can manage a certain amount of liquid before it spills over, and that spillage is when you get an injury, become symptomatic, have an issue, etc. And I think you can take that even farther in a case like mine and say that maybe there's a right-sided cup and a left-sided cup. If you think about how I got hurt, you would expect symmetry. I was riding a motorbike, putting pressure on my right and left side at the same time, but all my symptoms were left-sided. That would lead me to believe that maybe there was more liquid in my left-sided cup, more dysfunction on that side of my body, which tracks. But all of this to say, my body was managing a certain amount of dysfunction before I got hurt without any issue, without symptoms. And I believe that I have certainly lowered the amount of liquid in my body's cup, but I don't think that my body is perfect right now. My body is still lacking in flexibility. My body is still not activating its deep core in the optimal, ideal way in my day-to-day. There are definitely areas where I could continue to optimize, where I could continue to improve, but I'm still asymptomatic. And I wanted to pause and really unpack that in this video, because I think that sometimes when it comes to healing anything, but especially a physical injury like this, it's easy to get caught up in the idea of perfection when perfection isn't necessary for healing. It's just about getting that liquid back down to a more manageable level for your body, getting that dysfunctional level back down to a more manageable level for your body so that you're not experiencing symptoms. So I wanted to pause and make that point. But that's my maintenance program. Like I said, just maintaining flexibility and trying to maintain some of the motor programs that I worked on learning or rewiring during my time with my incredible pelvic PT. And the final bit that I wanted to share has to do with my mental health. And I really want to preface this and say that I am very aware of the version of me who would have done anything to be where I am today. I am very aware of what I've accomplished. I am very grateful. Sincerely, I practice my gratitudes about where I am, what I've managed to do, my body, my healing, all of it. I practice it every single day. And so I just wanted to preface speaking about some of the challenges that I find myself facing with my mental health now by saying that I'm aware of my healing and I'm so grateful, and I know so deeply I can feel the version of me who would have I would have done anything. I would have done anything to be making this video. So I'm aware of that. But that said, I am surprised by the newfound narrative that I have in my head. And when I really unpack it, I know that it's a reflection of my healing and how much better I must be doing, that I can even focus or even let this kind of voice take up so much space in my brain. I must be doing a lot better than I was to even be here. But I now have a voice in my head telling me that I haven't accomplished anything in the last 2 years. I now have a voice telling me that I wasn't really that hurt, that I really could have done a lot more than just heal in the last 2 years, that I should have, that I'm, I don't know, some sort of professional disappointment because I had to take so much time to heal and get myself better. And I know that that's not true. I know that what I managed to do, what I managed to overcome in the last 2 years is so worthwhile, and I would do it all again. And I know that there's beneath the surface of just being where I am, there's so much good that I was able to accomplish for my mental health, my physical health, my relationship with my husband, our lives together, our future. I know that that's true, and I believe that, I do, but simultaneously I just have this voice now telling me that I am some sort of failure. And it's just really interesting. So I'm working on derailing that voice. I'm working on continuing to build my case of how much I actually did accomplish and what it means to have healed from what I healed from, and all of that. I'm working on that. Also, something that is an interesting struggle related to my mental health is the change in my libido. It makes sense. I've been through a lot. Keith and I have both been through a lot in the last 2 years, and it makes sense that my libido would be lower, that my libido would have changed in the way that it has. But my baseline before I got hurt, my libido was just higher. I was always very interested in sex and exploring sexuality, and it came really naturally and easily to me. And I know that I can get back to that place, and I know that it just is a matter of being intentional and working on it, but it's still hard to not be there. It's hard to grasp having to be intentional about it and having to work on it and all of those things. So I don't know, and I've shared before about how my sexuality is a part of me that I hold really close to my understanding of myself and who I am. And so to be struggling with libido and desire is, I don't know, it feels like I can't recognize a part of myself, or like a part of me has changed in a way that I don't like, or something like that. It's jarring. It's jarring to me, and I'm not worried about it. I know that with intention and practice and routine, it'll change. I know that, but it's still a difficult thing to navigate for me, and it comes up in my mind, in my head. So there's that piece of it. And then the final piece is having to rewire routines and habits that I got into that once served me so much that no longer serve me. And I think an example of that now, as I enter into working again, actually maintaining a schedule and creating and taking on clients and doing the things that I want to do, one thing to note is that I at one point needed to be really kind with myself. I needed to let myself rest when I needed to rest. I needed to give myself a lot of grace and sweetness and make peace with slowing down, because those things were all really necessary and vital for my recovery, for my return to my baseline. But now that I'm back, or at least really close to being back, it doesn't serve me to be so gentle and sweet with myself. What serves me is structure. What serves me is working even if I'm tired. What serves me is showing up even if I am going through something difficult in my mind, or what have you. And it's just this interesting shift back to being disciplined and maintaining consistency even when the motivation isn't there and that sort of thing. It's more difficult than I thought it would be to rewire those habits and recognize this new version of myself for everything that she is capable of doing, and then holding her to those standards instead of letting her, me now, off the hook in ways that made a lot of sense to let myself off the hook 6 months ago, for example. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful, and it's not lost on me. And I am going to use everything that I've learned to hopefully change the narrative surrounding pudendal neuralgia and nerve healing in general. I really strongly believe that medicine is wrong about the way that they currently look at nerves and how capable of healing they really are, especially through the lens of pudendal nerves. I just think that this whole idea of diagnosing someone with a chronic pain condition at the 3 to 6 month mark is ludicrous, and I really want to work on changing that narrative. And I have all of these ideas and things that I want to give back and do, and none of it's lost on me. None of it's lost on me, but it's still this narrative of not being successful enough, of having wasted the last 2 years, is harder to overcome than I thought it would be. This change in my libido is something that I will improve upon. I can get myself back to the version of myself that I once knew. I know that I can, but it's still an undertaking, and it's more jarring than I expected it to be. It's just more, it shakes me more than I expected that it would. And having to rewire these habits and routines that I got into, this softness that I let myself settle into when it came to managing my expectations around work and profession, and changing that routine, changing those habits, is harder than I thought. And so I think that's my mental health update. And I think that's everything that I set out to share in my pudendal nerve healing update. My parting words are that what I've done is not unique. I don't think that I am special. I do think that there is such a thing as permanent nerve damage. I do not think that the majority of pudendal neuralgia cases are cases of permanent damage. I really think that there is a misunderstanding in medicine when it comes to nerve healing, especially pudendal nerve healing. I'm going to work on changing that narrative, but until then, please know that I'm not special. What I've been able to accomplish isn't special. You are just as capable as I am. Bodies are incredible, and so is yours. Bodies are so capable of healing. Yours is no exception. On that note, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, please let me know down below what I can do to improve. Feel free to comment absolutely anything, feedback, content suggestions, questions you have, anything. Comment it down below, and I'll try to get back to you. I do try really, really hard to read and respond to all of my comments. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram. And finally, if you'd like to see more content from me, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I make videos not only about pelvic things like today's video, but also about life things. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!